Welcome back to King Harald Finehair's Saga. And today is also quite an interesting episode because we come to the part where the famous Viking Gangerolf is excommunicated from Norway, or kicked out of Norway. I've been a little bit back and forth if I should read the sections first and then comment afterwards, or comment while I'm going along, and I think I've kind of landed that I'll comment while I'm going along because the narrative is pretty simple and it kind of gives the information as we go along. Anyway, today the last episode was about King Harald's actions in out of Western Norway, going into the Orkney Islands and down to Scotland and Ireland, basically punishing the Vikings that were raiding from those areas. And those Vikings most likely are noble and families and farmer families who escaped his iron rule on the west coast of Norway, revenging themselves. So King Harald returns back to Norway. King Harald's hair is cut. King Harald was visiting Ragnvald Earl at Møre, and at that point he had conquered the whole country. And as we heard last time, Ragnvald Earl and his father Øystein Glomra were allies of Harald at this point. He then took a bath. He also had his hair groomed, and Ragnvald Earl then cut his hair, which had been uncut and ungroomed for 10 winters. Before, he had been called Lufa, and Lufa meant like unruly, unkept hair. And if you remember, Harald made this famous vow that he wouldn't cut his hair until he had consolidated Norway into one kingdom, similar to what was in Denmark and in Sweden. Yeah. Before he had been called Lufa, but the Ragnvald Earl gave him a nickname and called him Harald Finehair. And everyone that saw him said that the name was most fitting, as he had both thick and beautiful hair. Gangerolf is made an outlaw. Ragnvald Møre Earl was the most beloved friend of King Harald, and the king held him in high honor. Ragnvald Earl was married to Hilda, the daughter of Rolf Nose, as in nose, Rolf Nefja. And their sons were Rolf and Tore. Ragnvald Earl also had 3 free sons. I translated to free sons because in many English translations they're called illegitimate sons, but that wasn't the case in Scandinavia at the time. So before it became a Christian, you would have like for earls and kings and chieftains, you would have one main marriage and then kind of secondary marriages. And the sons and daughters of these were called frille sønner, frille døtre. And they were not illegitimate. These were often political marriages to solidify alliances. And they would in fact be in line to inherit. Only they were behind any sons or daughters from the main marriage, so which in King Harald's case would have been Ragnhild of Jutland, or Denmark, or Jutland. So Rolf and Tore, they were the sons from the main marriage of Ragnvald Earl. Ragnvald Earl also had 3 free sons. One was called Hallad, another Einar, and the third one Rollau. They were grown men when the marital sons were children. Rolf was a great Viking, so one of the marital children, and he was so large of growth that no horse could carry him, so he walked by foot wherever he went and was called Gangerolf. Gangerolf means walking Rolf. This is a very, very famous Viking. He plundered much in the eastern way, Austerveger, and this is the Baltic countries and the lands east in Europe. So at this time was right about or the time where the Rus Vikings in the Russian primary chronicles, they're called Varangians, establish Holmgård or Novgorod in what is today northern Russia. And they also quickly thereafter established Kiev, which was called Kenagar in Scandinavia. And Gangerolf was part of this, probably this expedition in Austerveg was part of this Rus expeditions. Some people speculate that this Gangerolf is the same as Rørik, which is the founder of the Rus dynasty in Novgorod. I think Rørik is he's pretty hard to place. So there are other suggestions, like there's Gangerolf out of Norway has been suggested, and there's also Rørik of Dorestad, which was a Danish nephew of the King Harald Klak in Denmark. Now Gangerolf, he establishes himself in Normandy at a time where he couldn't at the same time been establishing himself and consolidating everything that Rørik did in Russia. And I also think personally that Rørik, the Danish prince of Dorestad, is highly unlikely that he's the Rørik of the Rus, because the primary chronicle of Russia, which chronicles the early ages there, places Rørik establishing the Rus in Novgorod and gradually down to Kiev. In the same period, we know from the Frankish annals that Rørik of Dorestad, he was super busy along the Frankish borders, and there's records of him being in diplomatic missions, talking with Charles the Bald at the exact same time that Rørik is doing major movements in Russia. So that's also not very likely. The Rørik of Russia, I would think, is much more likely to just look at what they called themselves, Rus, and then in Sweden, the main maritime power area at the time was Roslagen, which was the law area of, or outside Stockholm, the coastal area going a little bit north and south there, and it was the main power area of Svishul, so the kingdom of Sweden. And what did the Vikings call Russia? They called it Great Svishul. And what name did those take? They take the name of Rus, which is namesake with Roslagen. So I think it's much more likely that Rørik of the Rus was a Swedish noble. Maybe an outlier could be a noble from one of the many noble families that came out of Western Norway in an exodus and had to find new places. But I think that's much, much less likely. I would think he's a Swedish noble coming over. And as far as I can see, also, this is kind of the consensus position among Russian historians. So I put strong weight on that. Anyway, so Gangerolv is not Rørek. Even though he participated probably in those campaigns. He plundered much in the eastern way. One summer, when he came back from Viking in the east and into Viken, which is the area of Oslofjord around Oslo, and going down along the fjord, Oslofjord. One summer, when he came back from Viking in the east and into Viken, he cut beach cleaving there. And I translate this literally because strandhogg is such a colorful and important term in the sagas, and it's still a term in Scandinavia. And so that's when you attack a village or a town or a fort from coming in with your ships from the coast, like from the ocean, like the classical Viking raid. And strandhogg literally means to cleave the beach with your axe or a sword. So he cut beach cleaving there. King Harald was in Viken at the time and went into a rage when he heard this, as he had made plundering strictly forbidden within the country's borders. The king then announced at the ting that Gangerolv was to be named an outlaw in Norway. When his mother Hilde heard this, she traveled to meet the king and asked him to grant Rolf peace. But the king was so angry that nothing she said could help. Hilde then kvad. The nose-named renounced. Nose-named, his father was grandfather was Rolf Nase, and he had his grandfather's name, Rolf. Yeah, so it's a kenning for him. The nose-named renounced. Now the wolf is banished from the country, the wise brother. Why go to such lengths, ruler? And the Norse here is vi belidvi. Why take such action? And the word action, bella, here is, I think, is interesting, because if you look in Norwegian dialects today, to bære or to belle or bale with something, it means to take action, but it's like stupid action. It's when you have a problem, you try to fix it, and you do eventually fix it, but you do it in a really, really roundabout, unnecessarily painful way. So if you're kind of battling with something, you're struggling with something. I thought it was a colorful word choice in the kval. So King Harald, he's taking action, but in a little bit stupid way. It is ill-advised to threaten such a wolf. O warplank of Ygg. And this is a kenning, the shield of Odin, and it's a kenning for King Harald. He's the warplank of Ygg. He will not be gentle with the prince's herd if he roams in the forest. So the wolf will not be gentle with the prince's herd if he roams in the forest, if he's banned to the forest. The nose-named, so I'll just read it in one go. Again. The nose-named renounced, now the wolf is banished from the country, the wise brother. Why go to such lengths, ruler? It is ill-advised to threaten such a wolf. O warplank of Ygg. He will not be gentle with the prince's herd if he roams in the forest. Gangerolv then traveled west to the southern isles, which are the Hebrides, and then west to Valland, which is the Scandinavian term at the time for France. where he went on the warpath and established a large earldom where many Northmen lived. And that has since been called Normandy. Now, which is the province is called today. Northmen here I take to mean Norwegians, and no matter before there was some debate if Gangerolv is Danish, is Norwegian, and maybe he could be a Jutish prince or something. The sagas always put him out of the Møre Earl lineage, which at that time was very, very powerful. They controlled everything north of Vik, so they controlled all the uplands in Norway. That includes around Lake Mjøsa, where all the rich farming land is. It includes Ringerike, which is also around Mjøsa. And they had power relations over to Randsfjorden and the rich agricultural areas down towards Tyrifjorden. All traditional king areas in inland Norway. And their sphere of influence went up to their base in Møre and out to the coast. So they, south of the Earls of Trondheim, which were also very powerful, these are, the most powerful ones. And of course, through their base in Møre, they controlled at this point commerce and travel to Ireland and Scotland. So a very, very powerful family. So not unlikely that they would be, the first choice to head up a colony in Normandy. So that would be my guess. But no matter if he's Norwegian and Danish, the archaeological finds from that period in Normandy are Norwegian style. The brooches, they've found the swords, the ship rivets. And the Norman chroniclers also talked about that this was an exodus from Norway. So not only Gangerolf, but a lot of the noble families and farmers from western and southwestern Norway escaped and went to Normandy. And the Icelandic sources also say this, that they came to Iceland, the Faroe Islands, the Orkney Islands, and down to Valland. One has to remember that King Harald, he was pretty hardcore. I mean, he basically kicked out all the nobility of western and southwestern Norway, and they completely refused to lay down, so they would rather escape away from his harsh rule on the west and southwestern coast. And this has since been called Normandy. Gangerolf's son was Viljalm, and he was the father of Rikard, the father of another Rikard, the father of Robert Longspade, the father of Viljalm, bastard king of the English, and from him come all the kings of England thereafter. All the earls of Normandy are also of Rolf's lineage. So of course all the kings, Snorre is riding well while there still is a Norman rule in England. Queen Ragnhild the Mighty lived 3 years after she came to Norway. When she died, Erik, her son with King Harald, was sent to foster in the fjords with Tore Herse Roaldsson, and he grew up there. So that was about Harald cutting his hair and Gangerolf being outlawed from Norway. Hope you enjoyed it, and look forward to the next episode.